Mataji, what we've heard is that after initiation, there is all your past sins are taken away.
Yes.
But despite which we see that a lot of devotees still undergo suffering. And I recently read an article in which Prabhupada had given initiation to a devotee. He met with an accident next day.
Really?
Then there's this, it's a very quite a popular story that that soul was then took birth in the form of a lady, and then that lady took initiation from Bhakti Charu Maharaj. But the question being that after initiation, why do we still see devotees suffering?
All right. Every morning we take bath, right? And when we take bath, all of the dirt on our body is eradicated. But then during the day in our activities, we become dirty again. So the next day also we have to take bath. Same with the chanting of minimum 16 rounds every day. We chant our 16 rounds because that's for internal cleanliness. And then during the day, we meet with difficulties and questions and some contamination of the mind because we're in Kali Yuga, correct? So then the next day also we have to chant 16 rounds. It's true that just by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra once, all of the sins that we've committed are eradicated. But then just by breathing and just by moving and by interacting, automatically things contaminate us. So we have to chant 24 hours a day. So at the time of initiation, it's compared to when a fan is running. That fan is the chakra of our pap kefal or punya kefal. So when the spiritual master gives initiation, it's as if the plug is pulled out. And even we know when the plug is pulled out, the fan is still running, but it slows down, and finally it stops. So that's what happens at the time of initiation. And we can't expect that by initiation our miseries will all be eradicated. You can look at the example of so many great devotees such as Kunti Devi, the Pandavas, Draupadi, Srimati Radharani. These so-called that appear to be miseries to us are actually the increasing of dependence and love on Krishna. So a devotee's life, if you're a mediocre devotee, then Krishna won't test you. But if you're trying to make advancement in spiritual life, look at the problems that Srila Prabhupada had to go through. So this is the way Krishna intensifies his loving relationship with his devotees. How much we can take shelter of Krishna despite the fact that we're still experiencing so-called suffering and so-called misery while executing our services. All right? And so far as the history or whatever it is about that devotee, that was never verified at the time of Srila Prabhupada's presence. So whether it's true or not, we don't. I mean, of course, Bhakti Charaswami accepts that as being true, but you can't really use that as an example. It's better to use the examples that you find in the Srimad Bhagavatam of devotees. I mean, look at Ajamil. Even though he chanted the name of Narayan, he didn't go back to Godhead immediately. He had to go to Hardwar, purify himself, associate with the pure devotees, and then when he was purified, then he was able to go back to Godhead. So it's not an instant, we want everything fast now, like fast food. It's not I get initiated and then all of my sinful reactions are immediately eradicated. No, the fan is still turning, and we have to be more and more careful. And when we take our vows to follow the four regulative principles, if we break those principles, we're in even more trouble because we've taken a vow before the fire, before the Guru, before the Vaishnavas. So we have to be more careful after initiation. Okay. Are you initiated?
I'm intending to get initiated this year.
By whom?
His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami.
Wonderful, wonderful. Jai. More questions? Yes, Mataji.
My question is, how do we distance ourselves from association that doesn't inspire us in Krishna consciousness without coming off as cold or disrespectful?
Well, we choose our association, and whoever we associate with will become like that person. Prabhupada gives the example of if you associate with drunkards, and definitely you'll become a drunkard. So we can make a choice of who we associate with. And in the process of preaching Krishna consciousness, yes, we have to associate with undesirable personalities sometimes just so that we can help them advance in Krishna consciousness. And that's why the association of devotees is so important, to counteract that association with undesirable people. So we should take advantage of the society of devotees, stay in the association of devotees as much as possible, and then when we have to execute our services, we already have some strength by association. And rather than taking their association, we give them our association by instilling in them Krishna consciousness.
Yesterday I was reading in Chaitanya Bhagavat, so I would, if you can do some more clarity on that. The shloka says that, what to speak of being envious of Vaishnavas, if one causes pain to ordinary living entity, he is considered a fallen, low-class person. Even after worshipping Lord Vishnu, if a person gives trouble to other living entities, his worship becomes fruitless. Such a person suffers unlimited miseries. Then we were just speaking that even while we are breathing, even when we are walking, we do we are disturbing some living entities maybe. So then how do we connect?
Well, you posted that on the forum. First of all, who is the translator of that? Because Prabhupada didn't translate Chaitanya Bhagavat. And when one of his disciples attempted to translate it, that was Achyutananda Swami, because the Bengali is quite simple in Chaitanya Bhagavat, it's just vernacular, the way people speak. He came to an impasse, and he realized that he's not able to translate Chaitanya Bhagavat, because although it's in simple language, the meanings are very deep. So first I'd have to ask who the translator is.
I took it from our shop, the Chaitanya Bhagavat which we have.
Okay, we'll have to look and see who the translator is. And then we'd have to look at, I was also reading the Bengali that you sent and trying to understand that, because I personally can't fully accept translations other than the translations that are printed by Prabhupada in his BBT books. And aside from that, in the purport of that, and we don't know who wrote the purport, it referred to two slokas, one from the 3rd canto by Kapila in like the 25th or 26th chapter, his instructions to his mother, and the other is in the 11th canto, 5th chapter. So I didn't have time to look up those two references. Maybe in your phone you can read those two slokas that they recommend that to understand that what's being said there better. But I do know that Kapila, although I don't know which sloka they're referring to there, Kapila described 3 different classes of devotees. Devotees, of course, there's the Kanishta, the Madhyam, and the Uttama Adhikari. But then he also explains that there are devotees who perform devotional service in the mode of ignorance, and it's this type of devotee. They're devotees, they accept Lord Vishnu, maybe they accept devotees, because the Kanishta Adhikari always thinks that he's the greatest devotee and nobody else is a devotee but him. But those in the mode of ignorance, although they appear to be devotees, they might be committing violence to other living entities. And that includes other devotees. Some devotees are very harsh in their behavior, and some of them are even violent in their behavior, and these are the exact qualities that we try to eradicate by performing devotional service. So it's a warning to us, and if you have time, maybe you can read those slokas that are being referred to better understand this. Oh, you just go to vedabase.com. Three 26.
Previous sloka has this number.
Oh yes, the previous sloka, right? That's
Actually, after this, there are two more slokas
yeah,
on the same subject.
right.
If you want, I can read that.
So I can't really answer a question about shastras that haven't been presented to us by Srila Prabhupada.
The next slok says that the worship performed by persons who do not know that Lord Vishnu is present within the heart of every living entity is certainly materialistic. It is
Yes, and that's exactly the way Kapila Dev describes devotees in the mode of ignorance to his mother. They don't recognize the Supreme Lord in the hearts of all living entities. They're separatists. So therefore they actually commit offense to the Supreme Lord by not honoring all living entities. Kapila Dev explains all of that to his mother. Any more questions here in the group?
How can I join Krishna consciousness?
How can you join Krishna consciousness?
Someone else is asking that question. Who is asking?
Susmita Sahu.
Excuse who?
Susmita Sahu. Susmita Sahu.
Online.
Online.
Online. Okay. How can you join Krishna consciousness? Krishna consciousness is the natural function of the soul. It's like we're covered right now, just like you might have gold, and that gold might be tarnished. And by cleaning away the tarnish, the blackness on the gold, then all of the qualities of gold are manifest. So you already have Krishna consciousness naturally within you. And by associating with the devotees, by following the four regulative principles, by increasing our sadhana, attending morning and evening classes, coming to visit the temple, and particularly by associating with the devotees, that Krishna consciousness, which is already naturally within you, will manifest itself in your personality. It'll just shine like gold that's being polished.
Next question. I want to know about Madhurya Bhav.
Madhurya Bhav, yes. That's described briefly in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami. And there are two categories of Madhurya Bhav, and that is the Swakiya, and the other is Parakiya. Swakiya is those devotees who love Krishna in the mood of pati and patni, husband and wife, according to all the regulative principles of dharmic grihastha life. And the other is Parakiya, and that is accepting the Supreme Lord as one's beloved. And the example given there is the gopis in Vrindavan. So you can read the chapters dedicated to Madhuriras in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And then if you're very interested in all of the scientific details of Madhuriras, because Rupa Goswami only covered in short form Madhuriras in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, because there were many other aspects of bhakti to cover in that introductory law book. He then wrote a book called Ujjvala Nilamani that's fully dedicated to Madhuriras. And that is the entire scientific process, all of the different bhavas and the different activities and the different groups of those in Madhurya Bhav. So that's a very elevated book, very scientifically presented. And after studying Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and understanding all of the rasas, if you feel that you want to get more information, then Srila Rupa Goswami has given us that book, Ujjvala Nilamani.
Next question. What should be the mood of a professional who is also devotee when he has associated with other for rendering his service, but those devotees are not really very professional?
Professional means his job? Yes. Yeah, we all... when Gopal Krishna Maharaj was a grihasta, Prabhupada encouraged him to continue with his professional karmi job. He had a very good karmi job in America. And Gopal Krishna, at that time as grihasta, wrote to Prabhupada that I'm just like a karmi, working just for money. I don't get to associate with devotees. And Prabhupada explained that, no, you're not a karmi, you're a devotee, and you're doing this devotional service, and this devotional service is maintaining the whole temple. So never think that you're a karmi just because you're doing a professional job. The fruits of that work, as per karma yoga and action in Krishna consciousness, should go to supporting Krishna conscious activities. If it doesn't go to supporting Krishna conscious activities, then it's just like a karmi job. So when we take the liberty to work outside of pure Krishna conscious activities, then whatever professional work we're doing, we have to make sure that the fruits of that work are going to support Krishna conscious activities, and then our work becomes purified. And then when we're associating with outsiders, with non-devotees, with devotees who aren't themselves fixed in their devotional service, we remain transcendental because the karma phal is being offered to Krishna.
In continuation to this, I want to ask.
Yes?
So, we have heard this philosophy many times that whatever we, as a result, we get some money from the company and that should be used in Krishna's service, then that time spent in the company is also bhakti yoga in a way.
Yes.
But then sometimes we are using money for buying some vehicle or something
Yes.
which are not that necessary to practice Krishna consciousness, but then our mind thinks that no, I'm using this vehicle to go to temple, something like that.
Yes.
So,
That's fine. That's fine. As a grihasta, we dovetail everything, our family, our children, our house, our vehicles, whatever we have, we try to dovetail into Krishna's service. And that's the art of Krishna consciousness. That whatever position we're in, even a brahmachari, he has to buy things. He buys a phone, he buys a computer, but he's using all of that in Krishna conscious activities, hopefully. So a grihasta also, they have a bigger responsibility because they have more living entities that are dependent upon them, and they have to use their intelligence, use all their resources to try to make their whole family Krishna conscious. So that's a very big responsibility. And that's why grihasta life, and the grihastas, they are supposedly supporting the entire community, because brahmacharis, vanaprasthas, and sannyasis are dependent upon the grihastas. So it's a very responsible position, and when we do our work as grihastas, we have to plan in advance how I'm going to be able to dedicate this in Krishna's service. Our children, our wife, our daily activities, and try to maintain some type of sadhana, and also always make sure that we can chant our rounds. It's not that I'm working and I'm giving some money to Krishna and therefore I don't have to follow sadhana. No, the sadhana has to be built into your lifestyle, and then you'll remain untouched by unwanted association. You will be able to affect the people that you associate with rather than they affecting you. When we became grihastas, Prabhupada wrote us a letter giving us blessings, and he said, anyone who comes in contact with you, you will be able to benefit them as husband and wife. So we have to set an excellent example in grihasta life so that others will want to become like us. Yes?
I'm coming from a community where there are a lot of congregational members and everybody is doing job or business and they're all trying to serve Krishna as per they understand the philosophy. But then we see there is different standard of living. Somebody is having maybe 3 pair of clothes, somebody is having 300 pair of clothes. So is it both applying in Krishna's service, or 300 is little too more of gratification, or it can be justified as Krishna consciousness?
Well, we have examples of many different types of grihastas. We have Sudama Brahman, who couldn't even maintain his family properly, but he was fully Krishna conscious, although the children were hungry, the wife was hungry, they were all in rags. And then we have this example of Pundarik Vidyanidhi, who lived like a king, with scents and servants and so many beautiful accessories. So, and both of them were pure devotees. So there's no one set, it depends upon the personality of the devotee and their relationship with Krishna. So depending upon what the mentality is and what the capacity is for the person. If a millionaire like Alfred Ford, Ambarish Prabhu, our godbrother, if he can give in service whatever he has, and if a very poor devotee like Sudama Brahman can give a little something, then Krishna sees, Ramachandra gives that example while building the bridge, when they told the little squirrel to get out of the way because we big Madhuriras, we're doing very heavy work, we don't want you to get crushed by all these boulders. And he was just putting the sand in between the boulders. So Ramachandra saw them equally. Whatever service you can do, I appreciate. For me, it's the love that I see. So therefore, because each one of us is different, they're the 3 modes of material nature, you multiply them by another 3, 9, then 81, then millions and millions. That's why there are 8,400,000 species of life. And every single species can associate, can become devotees. And that's why Krishna, he appears in every single species of life. And he describes that in the Bhagavad Gita, how he appears amongst fish, who he is, amongst animals, who he is. And grihastas also, unlimited varieties of how we can live our life according to what our mentality and our relationship is with Krishna.
Next question. Explain about Srimati Radharani Bhakti Bhav.
Explain about Srimati Radharani Bhakti Bhav. How many days do I have? Is to be in 500 words or less? You know, what do they want? You can read the beautiful descriptions in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and in the Srimad Bhagavatam and in Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book about Srimati Radharani's love for Krishna. And if you want to get encapsulated, then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us the Sikshastakam. And there, in the last verse, is the mood of Mahabhav. That, how does the sloka go? Ashlisyava. And does anyone know the translation? You can make me brokenhearted.
Whether you kick me out or keep
Or embrace me.
or embrace me.
Right.
Or embrace me.
Yes.
Yes.
So in sutra form, if you want to understand the Mahabhav of Srimati Radharani, then you can go through the Astakam, and particularly you can concentrate on that last sloka that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave, because that is the mood of Srimati Radharani in Mahabhav.
Next question. It is said in Kali Yuga, Mansik Aparadh are not accounted, but due to three modes, if we develop some negativity about Vaishnava only in the mind, so will that Mansik Aparadh be accounted?
Well, generally, whatever we're thinking is manifest in our behavior. Now, we might be, for instance, we go back to the example of Pundarik Vidyanidhi and Gadadhar Pandit. When Mukunda Datta took him for darshan of Pundarik Vidyanidhi, he got angry. He said, why have you brought me to see this materialist? So mentally, he was offending Pundarik Vidyanidhi. But then, because Mukunda could understand what he was thinking, when he quoted that verse about how merciful the Supreme Lord is, that even he gave himself to Putana, and she attained the position of a mother in the spiritual world. And Pundarik Vidyanidhi, when he heard about the mercy of the Lord, and he felt completely incapable, because he had not received that mercy. And he lost complete control of himself. All of the beautiful arrangements all around him were destroyed within a minute. He was kicking and thrashing and rolling on the ground, and everything was breaking, and the servants couldn't even keep him conscious. And then when Gadadhar Pandit saw that, he realized, mentally, I've committed an offense. And in order to counteract that mental offense, he surrendered to Pundarik Vidyanidhi and took Diksha from him. So mentally, if we're thinking something offensive about a devotee, we can remember that we might externally see a devotee in a particular manner, but we might not be able to understand actually that devotee. So if we can stop ourselves that far, and there are many different levels of Vaishnava Aparadh, if we have some question about a devotee, then we can go to a senior devotee whose opinion we respect and ask them how to correct our mentality. Because a lot of times we'll see devotees and we'll think that they're doing improper behavior, and therefore we need senior devotees to consult, and hopefully they can help us. A few days ago, Devakinandan Prabhu was giving a lecture, and he was describing that Prahlad Maharaj, he was such a great devotee, and sometimes we'll hear other devotees being praised, and we'll say, oh no, you don't know that devotee, you don't know the truth about him, right? He gave Dharmatma as an example. You say, oh, Dharmatma is such a, no, you don't know that. So this is our carryover from the envious material consciousness that was developed through so many lifetimes, right? So as devotees, we have to stop ourselves there. And if a Vaishnava is being praised, we shouldn't become envious of that Vaishnava that is being praised. And we should try to see the good qualities in devotees. And if there are bad qualities and we have some question about them, then better to go to someone who we respect and ask them about that so that it can either be confirmed or alleviated.
Next question is, how should a devotee interpret and understand Krishna in the current situation when innocent are dying in the Russian-Ukraine war?
War, pestilence, drought, famine, disease, these things are, Prabhupada explains this many, many times, that these things must occur so long as sinful activities are being committed. And the greatest of all sinful activities is the slaughterhouses. Why are wars enacted? Because of the reaction of the killing of so many innocent animals in the slaughterhouses, wholesale slaughter. So innocent people, who amongst us is innocent? Who hasn't committed great sinful activities? If not in now we're trying to stop our sinful activities. But if we just remember some of our past sinful activities, whatever suffering we're getting is just a pinprick compared to what we actually deserve. So war cannot be stopped so long as there's slaughtering of innocent animals, because the people will also then be slaughtered as a reaction to this.
What is the highest form of bhakti?
The highest form of bhakti. Well, according to one's relationship with the Supreme Lord, every form of bhakti is the highest form of bhakti, whether you're a servant, whether you're a parent, whether you're a friend, whether you're a lover, and whether you're a cow in Shantaras. All bhakti is accepted by the Supreme Lord, and according to the different relationship that a devotee has, that's the highest that the devotee can render to the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada, he would say that when Krishna embraces the calf and when Krishna embraces Radharani, so that embrace, they're both bhakti. And for Krishna it's the same, because the calf is loving Krishna as much as the calf can possibly love Krishna, and so is Srimati Radharani. So higher and lower, there's no comparative level in bhakti. Everyone is doing their service to render the topmost pleasure to the Supreme Lord. And whatever they're doing is the highest form of bhakti, according to their relationship with Krishna. Look at Hanuman, he was a Vanara, and look at all the service that he was able to render. And he was in the Dasyabhav. But Ramachandra said, "You're my greatest servant." And Srimati Sita Devi, who didn't have the slightest tinge of contamination, Ramachandra had to send her away because he was performing the duties of a great king. So, comparatively speaking, we can't compare different aspects of bhakti because everyone is trying their best to serve the Lord according to his relationship with Krishna. And alternatively, we can say that Madhuriras is the highest form of bhakti because all of the Shastras proclaim that Madhuriras is the highest. But according to Krishna, everyone is doing their service to the best of their ability in pure bhakti.
Next question. We should not be proud of any little service bhakti we do, but have it proud of following Srila Prabhupada and Merciful Gauranga. Is okay?
Yes, yes, that's real pride. Just like everything that we find contaminated in the material world can be found in the spiritual world in a purified form. So even ahankara in the material world is that we're thinking we're this body, but we have a real identity in the spiritual world that we identify with. our ego, our real ego. So the same with pride. A devotee can be very proud of the fact that he's a menial servant of the Supreme Lord. But the example that Krishna set for the gopis, when they're thinking that, oh, we're great devotees because Krishna is giving us so much attention, then he disappeared from them. So pride in being a servant, but pride thinking that we're greater than others, that has to be avoided. We always have to remember Trinadapi Sunichena Tororiva Sahishnuna, that we should have to remain lower than the straw in the street, ready to be stepped on.
Next question. How to remain calm in a provoking situation, and please bless me and my family with Brajdhamvas.
With Brajdhamvas. How to be calm in a provoking situation. Well, sometimes we can't remain calm. I'm sorry, I just had to read the whole Ramayana, so I have all these stories of how Sugriva, you know, Rama and Lakshman were there. They had just arrived in Lanka, and Ravana was standing on top of his palace, looking at the millions of monkeys and bears and Ram and Lakshman. And Sugriva he couldn't control himself. He just jumped up and came to Ravana and threw off his crown, you know, and Ravana was so astounded, you know, and nobody could stop Sugriva from doing it. So sometimes we have to take action. Prabhupada and Sri Krishna himself, they weren't in favor of ahimsa. And the whole message of Bhagavad Gita is sometimes you can't remain calm. Sometimes you have to fight for Krishna. So yes, in a provoking situation, we have to have the intelligence to understand whether to remain calm and let this person not disturb us, or whether we have to take action. And quite often, Prabhupada would take action.
Next question. When we wake up in the morning, some say we should first look at our hands, some say we should touch Mother Earth, some say pay obeisance to your Lord, some say have darshan. What is the best to start with?
I don't know who the some are and you know where the different things are. According to what we've learned is the first thing to do in the morning is to go and cleanse your body so that you become purified enough to go to the temple and take darshan of the Supreme Lord and chant the holy names of the Lord. So as soon as one wakes up, of course we should, Prabhupada once told me, you have facility to chant Hare Krishna 24 hours, so do it. So whether we're sleeping, whether we're waking, whether we're serving, we should be chanting Hare Krishna 24 hours. That means even when we wake up, we can wake up with Hare Krishna on our tongue and then go and cleanse ourselves so that we become purified enough to go and take darshan of their lords in the temple and associate with the devotees.
Next question.
Oh, and so far as blessing for Braj Bas, that blessing comes from the instructions of the spiritual master. If he gives service in the holy Dham, then certainly you'll be able to stay in the Dham. And if he tells you to go to hell to preach Krishna consciousness, then that is just as relishable as living in the holy Dham. Whatever it takes to please our spiritual master, because as in the case of Srila Prabhupada, his consciousness was always in Vrindavan, but he was willing to go to hell just to fulfill his spiritual master's instruction to him.
How to not get carried away and develop pride that my sadhana is becoming strong?
My karma is becoming?
Sadhana.
Sadhana. Sadhana is becoming strong. Well, sadhana, there are different levels of sadhana. In the beginning, we receive instructions from our spiritual master in sadhana, because we're so impure in our activities. We have to rise, bathe, go to Mangalarti, chant japa, take prasadam, engage in devotional service, then evening program, and then take 6 hours of rest at night. Okay, that's basic sadhana. Now, the reason we're given sadhana is because we don't have a taste for devotional service. But sadhana, practice makes perfect. If we engage in this sadhana and it becomes our lifestyle, then this sadhana is not considered sadhana anymore. It becomes a spontaneous, loving exchange with the Lord. That, oh, why am I wasting all this time sleeping? I could be chanting, I could be studying. And then when we do wake up in the morning, we quickly run to the temple because that's the time when Radha and Krishna are waking up, and we want to wake them up with arti. And as we learn more and more, we realize that this so-called sadhana that we're doing is actually what's going on in the spiritual world. And when this sadhana becomes our very life, then that becomes spontaneous ragatmika bhakti. It's not just sadhana anymore. So there's no question of pride. It's practice makes perfect. So in the beginning, it's difficult for us to wake up. We don't like to have to sit in class the whole, a whole hour. It's time for prasadam. But later, we develop such a taste for these things that we can't wait till Bhagavatam class starts. Who's going to be speaking? What's the sloka going to be? What realizations are they going to describe? And then that develops into so much, it's just a natural taste for all these things that were just considered ordinary sadhana bhakti in the beginning. So pride, there's no question of pride. It's a development, an internal development, and you can't compare with other people. It's between you and the Supreme Lord, how you're advancing closer to Him.
Mataji, a linked question. I told my mother that I will be attending a question answer, so she sent me a WhatsApp message, and it says she's been chanting for about 10 years now and is a devotee.
Wonderful.
Initiated devotee. She says that we are not able to reach attentive stage. Kya kare?
You're not able to?
She's not able to reach attentive stage of chanting despite so many years. What to do?
Okay. Does she chant in her home?
Yes.
Okay. Do you live far from a temple?
Yes, far from the temple.
Oh, I see. If there's...
It's in a village, and she cannot drive, and my father is not a devotee, so she stays home.
I
She
see.
attends, due to COVID, she started attending these Zoom classes and
Yeah.
is in touch with devotee, but on phone.
Okay.
She reads Bhagavatam, Gita, and she does all
Okay. And she has a temple in her
Yes,
house?
yes, there's a-
And when she's chanting, is she sitting in front of the deities, or what is her...
She sits outside the temple. There's a room which is a temple. And
Yeah.
Outside there's a photo of Radha Krishna, and she sits down on the carpet and chants.
And she chants like that? Okay. And what time does she chant during the day?
She finishes her prescribed rounds in the morning and does extra rounds in the afternoon. Mataji.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. She must have a taste if she's chanting every day like that for 10 years. I think she's just being humble. Because to be so steady and to chant early in the morning, it's all the right ingredients for developing attachment. And the fact that she can't be near the devotees, and she's turned her home into a temple. So she should just continue and listen very carefully to the chanting and try to always finish the rounds before you start your services in the daytime, so that you're in good consciousness. And certainly Krishna will bless her with attentiveness and more taste in her chanting if she remains steady like that, especially to chant early in the morning.
Some devotee first listen lecture around 3 AM and then do 16 rounds. So which is better? First 16 round in the morning, or even before that hearing katha?
I've never heard that we should hear a class first. Always Prabhupada's instructed us to chant our rounds first thing in the morning, if possible in the association of devotees, because then we won't get distracted looking at our phone and, you know, different things like that. Listening can go on anytime during the day, but first we have to cleanse our mind, and that cleansing process is done through japa, through the chanting of the holy name. So it's recommended, and it's the sadhana that Srila Prabhupada gave us, to chant our rounds first thing, and then go on with our other prescribed duties.
How can we avoid offense while residing in Vrindavan?
While residing in Vrindavan. First, you have to know what the offenses are. There are different types of offenses. There are 10 offenses to the holy name. There are 10 offenses to the holy Dham that Narottam Das Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur have given us. There are seva aparads that are given in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. There are Vaishnava aparads. There are Guru aparads. So if you want to avoid aparads, first you have to identify what it is that you're trying to avoid. And so far as living in the holy Dham, the 10 offenses of the holy Dham, we have to be very careful not to make a business of our devotional service, to see the pilgrims as ordinary people, to not commit offense to any resident of the Dham. Prabhupada was so careful, he would even have us catch the mosquitoes and take them out of his room. So these, and of course the first offense is to disrespect the Guru who has revealed the holy Dham to you. So identify those 10 offenses to the holy Dham and try to eradicate those offenses, and then you'll be able to avoid offenses in the holy Dham.
Can we elaborate the first point, doing business out of the devotion?
Yes, professional, performing deity worship with remuneration, and kirtan for money, right. When we come to the holy Dham, we should be prepared to simply render selfless service to the Supreme Lord. And it's one of the 10 offenses to make a business of one's devotional activities.
Many times we get tired due to family events and job, work due to which post-chanting, we end up taking a nap, and that later on developed a guilty. So what should we do to avoid that?
We develop what?
Guilt.
Guilt.
So what should we do to avoid that?
Well, you have to be regulated in your activities. First of all, you have to see how many hours of sleep you actually need so that you can remain attentive in your chanting. Some people only need 4 hours, some people need 6 hours, some people need 8 hours if their health is not good. So you have to, and it should be in one stretch, you have to first calculate how many hours does my body actually need so that I can remain attentive when I'm chanting and I don't fall asleep and then feel guilty afterwards. And then when you've come to that balance in your life, you'll be able to chant attentively and hear your rounds nicely, and your mind will be clear, because we eat food to nourish the body, and sleep is the food of the mind. If we don't get enough sleep, then our mind is malnourished, and that's when we become inattentive and we take naps and we fall asleep during our chanting. So we have to make sure we get enough sleep.
Next question. What is the best time to do mala? Before Brahma Muhurat, like 2-3 a.m. in the Brahma Brahma Muhurat 4 a.m. or after sunrise 5 a.m.?
No, the best time to chant japa always is before sunrise, before we start our activities. We go, we have darshan of this, either we can chant before Mangalartik or after Mangalartik. That's all Brahma Muhurta time. And that's the best time to chant japa. Srila Prabhupada would chant his japa before Mangalartik and continue, and then he would go on a nice japa walk. But most of his chanting was done during the Brahma Muhurta time, before Brahma Muhurta. I'm sorry, before sunrise.
Okay, next question, Mataji. Can we come for Mangala Aarti during periods on third day?
Oh, now, originally, Prabhupada said that women should stay out of the temple for 5 days. And then there was it created a problem because in those days the women did all of the deity worship in the foreign temples. So then it was requested that the women only have to stay away from their services for 3 days. And then on the 4th day they take a full bath and then they can start their services again. So this was the compensation that Prabhupada allowed, 3 days, but those 3 days should be observed. Now, there was one Mataji who wrote a letter to Prabhupada in Mayapur saying, is it okay if we're in clean clothes and we're clean, if we sit in the back of the temple and attend class and attend the programs? And when that letter was read to Prabhupada, she wrote it on behalf of the Matajis of Mayapur. And Prabhupada called that letter subtle seduction. Prabhupada already gave the rule that we should stay out of the temple and not do services for 3 days, right? And then on the 4th day bathe. So if we're not able to follow that for some reason, that's our weakness, because that time can be used for chanting and for reading and for resting. And even according to Srila Rupa Goswami, it's one of the aparads to touch a woman at that time. So if you're mingling with people, then you'll cause other people to commit offense. So it's better to use that time for resting, and it's a biological thing. You have to let your body cleanse, and then you won't get sick for the rest of the month. And if you just can't bear not coming to the temple, well, nowadays we have Zoom and we have so many things we can watch, take darshan while we're at home. But it's better to use those 3 days. And even here when I was serving Prabhupada, Prabhupada knew when I was sick and he would send in a message. He just knew, because he's super so. He said, the servant would come in and say, Prabhupada said you shouldn't cook for a few days. So then I wouldn't cook for a few days. So, because he knew, I knew, and although the service wasn't covered, the devotees had to find somebody, because Prabhupada didn't want the cooking to go on at that time. So, and then one day, because I was very young, I was very impatient, I sent in a message. I said, beautiful vegetables had come that day. Can I cook? It was the 3rd day. And Prabhupada said, okay. And everything was a total disaster. At the whole, because you have to, everything's very scientific when you cook for Prabhupada. He had a cooker, it had to be going for 45 minutes, then you had 10 minutes to get everything ready. When I was out of the kitchen getting the chula ready, someone turned off the cooker. And everything was an hour and a half late. So it was my lesson from Srila Prabhupada: don't try to come back on the 3rd day. So then Prabhupada punished me. He said, all right, now you can't cook for another few days. So that lesson was so strong in my mind because it was directly with Srila Prabhupada when I tried on the third day to still serve him, and then I got punished by him, that the next time it happened, I immediately ran to his servant. I said, I can't cook. The servant got so angry because he was getting interrupted with his typing work. He made a mess of everything. And but when Prabhupada was told by Bhagaji that no, Mataji couldn't cook, I didn't get in trouble. The servant got in trouble because Prabhupada knew that I was trying to follow his instructions. I mean, I hate to speak about these things, but the women have to understand that minimum 3 days. We have to respect that. And on the 4th day, take a full bath and then come back to service. Okay? Don't get punished by Prabhupada like I did.
Next question. In Shastras, it is said that milk which is offered to Lord should be drawn from happy and street-free cow. But in current situation, all cows are in the street, so how can we get healthy milk?
Well, not all cows. If you, first of all, wherever it is in the Shastra, they'd have to show that because people pull out, you know, which sloka is that from. And then also, even when Prabhupada had to go preach in the West, in those days, by law, they injected into the milk vitamin A and vitamin D, which was fish oil. And the devotees asked Prabhupada, what should we do? This is the only milk that we get. And he said, well, you have to offer milk. You know, there might be some contamination. So Prabhupada was aware of the different contaminations, and still milk had to be offered. But we do have alternatives. And if someone is so concerned that they want to only offer milk from a happy cow, then they should keep a cow. And they should milk their own cow and take good care of the cow. Because that's how you're going to make spiritual advancement, by offering something in the mode of goodness to the Supreme Lord. So, and that means changing your lifestyle to the way the Brijbasis lived, the way the, you know, Krishna lived, to set an example. Do cow protection. Give up your job in the city and go live in the country and keep some cows and grow some land and grow some crops to feed the cows. Just like Mother Yasoda, she would have special grasses for her cows for the best milk for Krishna. That's bhakti.
Mataji, I was asking this question to a few people and I could not get the answer. In Bhagavad Gita 11th chapter, 32nd verse.
Yes.
It is said that Krishna tells Arjun, with the exception of you, all soldiers here on both sides will be slain.
Yes.
Does it mean that they will be taking repeated birth and death and Pandavas will go back home? Because as we know, Ashwathama and Kripacharya, Satyaki and Yuyutsu, 5-6 people survived the war apart from the
Yes.
Pandavas.
Yes. No, because all of the, on both sides,
Yes.
because everyone, and this is in the Srimad Bhagavatam, because
Bhagavad Gita 11th chapter 32nd.
no, later on, because the Srimad Bhagavatam is after the Bhagavad Gita, it's post Bhagavad Gita, what happened after the war. So there is described that because everyone on both sides of the army were taking darshan of the Supreme Lord at the time of death, they all went back to the spiritual world. Now, the Pandavas, they stay in the material world. They don't go back to Godhead. They go from universe to universe with Krishna to perform pastimes with Krishna. So going back to Godhead, that was, all of the soldiers, they were able to go back to Godhead. But the Pandavas, they travel with Krishna. And each individual, like Ashwatthama, he got a benediction that he wouldn't die. That was a curse. You see? He's cursed, he's still here somewhere. He couldn't go back to Godhead.
But then it is said slain, they'll be killed. Two of them are.
Some of them weren't killed. That's true. Yes.
Next question. Like you said few minutes ago, chanting purifies our mind. So this is even more stronger than hearing katha from pure Vaishnavas?
Well, there's japa, there's kirtan, and there's sankirtan. So japa is for our personal purification. And kirtan includes lectures. Prabhupada says that lectures are also a form of kirtan. And kirtan, kirtaniya sadhari, this is, kirtan is for the purification of everyone who's taking part in it. And sankirtan is for the purification of anyone who's hearing, plus those who are taking part in it. So for personal purification, we have japa. And then in the association of devotees, we have kirtan. And then congregationally and for the public, we have sankirtan. All of them are paramvidayate, Sri Krishna said, all of them are purifying. But if you're interested in personal purification, then you have japa.
Next question. My family members are not interested for chanting or any kind of devotional service. How to evoke them?
How to?
Evoke them.
Avoid?
Evoke.
Awaken them, yes. Well, our families also had no interest in Krishna consciousness. The secret weapon is prasadam. You give them prasadam. And you just flood them with such delicious prasadam that they just love to take prasadam, and that prasadam will purify them to the point where they'll appreciate Krishna consciousness gradually. So whoever's written this, if there's any way you can cook delicious prasadam for your family and feed them very nice sattvic prasadam that's offered to Krishna, that will change their hearts. Okay, any more questions? It's 12 o'clock, I don't know. We started a little late.
One last question, Mataji.
Yes.
There was a story as a kid I had heard in Mataji that there is this hunter who's chasing a cow, and then there's a person who sees the cow and he says that the cow has gone this way.
Yes.
Next birth, the cow takes birth and kills him. Next birth, she takes birth as a woman, and the person, it's a long story. Basically what I'd like to say is, Mataji, that if a person has done a deed, that he has killed somebody, and next birth he has to get killed, that is get murdered or something like that. If it is exactly this way, that for a murder tit for tat, then isn't the person who's committing the murder only a part of the plan? He's just assisting or making the karma happen. He's just a tool. So then is he doing any prarabdha?
Well, there are 6 people who are held responsible for the killing, for meat eating, let's say. Any type of meat eating. It's not just the person who puts the meat in his mouth. It's the person who sells the animal. It's the person who buys the animal. It's the person who transports the animal. It's the person who cooks the animal. Ultimately, it's the person who serves the meat. And then the 6th is the person who eats the meat. So all of those people are equally held responsible for killing of that animal. So I don't know that story. I've heard different versions of it. I don't know where it comes from either. But any type of meat eating, animal killing, all of those people are held responsible, not just the person who actually killed the animal.
But something like Mataji, a person commits a murder, for example. Next birth, he's going to face the prarabdha. Eventually, next birth.
Well, no, if the law, and this is why Prabhupada and the Manu Samhita, capital punishment, if he's killed in this lifetime, then he doesn't have to suffer the reaction in his next lifetime.
When, this lifetime or next lifetime? So if he has done
A
sin,
murder, yeah.
murder, and next birth he gets murdered by somebody, that somebody, he is just helping the process of karma. So is he creating prarabdha
Well,
himself?
we can step out of that whole process of karma by taking diksha and engaging in devotional service. Because really, every time we breathe, we're killing so many little microbes and so many little bugs that are attacking our body. You know, with our disinfectants, we're killing them. So we're killers also. But when we take diksha and we engage our body in Krishna's service, then we become free from the reactions of that killing. If our body is being used in Krishna's service, then we don't have to suffer the reactions of that killing. Okay?
So, devotee asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu regarding who is a Vaishnava.
Yes,
So one of the answers he gives is the person who chants Krishna's name is a Vaishnava.
yes.
So now connecting it to Vaishnava Prad.
Vaishnava Parad, yes,
So when we are doing some services,
yes.
and that services, some devotee doesn't like it. I don't know whether to call it offense or aprar or not. But if somebody is dissatisfied with it,
Yeah.
does it qualify as a Vaishnava aprar or Vaishnava offense?
You'd have to give me a real example of what you're talking about.
Okay, so I am doing a service of distributing prasadam, for example.
Yes,
And distributing prasadam, some devotee wants a particular item more,
yes,
but I cannot give it more because we have limited thing to give,
yes,
But then you feel really bad, I am 30 years, 40 years in the movement and you said no. Or maybe I am 2 years in the movement and you said no. It can be anything, I don't know.
yeah.
So, how to understand that?
Because that devotee gets angry at you for not giving the prasadam that he wants? Well, it's his problem, not your problem. You're trying to do everything so that all the devotees are satisfied, and he, because of his greed.
This is instructed by some senior guru, it's not my decision.
Yes, of course. Yes, you're just doing your service of you giving everyone the same amount, and that way there'll be enough for everybody. So if someone doesn't accept that and they get angry, well, that anger is coming from lust. We know that, because they want more than what their quota is. So it's not your fault. You're just doing what you've been told to do.
But then in general, people feel that it's offense. And 10 devotees come to me and tell that you are doing an offense.
I don't see where the offense is, especially when you're sitting in an assembly of devotees and there are hundreds of devotees and we're honoring prasadam. So honoring prasadam, it doesn't mean that, you give me more and then down the line the other people won't get. No, that's not honoring prasadam. When we sit down for prasadam, it's not just to fill our belly. It's because we're honoring the Lord's prasadam. And whatever's given to us, then we should be satisfied. And if we're still hungry afterwards, then we have to make some different arrangement. But honoring prasadam is a different thing. You have to speak louder.
As you were telling about devotees in Krishna life, they are doing their morning and evening sadhana and engaging everything in Krishna service.
Yes.
Can they also advance as much as devotees who are doing full-time Krishna conscious, direct Krishna conscious activities?
Yes, because the service that you're doing during the day, let's say if you have a job, if you're offering the fruits of that to Krishna, it's a matter of your consciousness. For instance, a mother. One time a mother in the very early days, she had a baby, and she was the pujari. So she wanted to give the baby to other devotees to take care of so she could continue the deity worship, right? So Prabhupada wrote her a very strong letter saying that no, your child worship is more important than deity worship. So sometimes we have a misconception of I should give up all of my activities and just only engage in temple service. No, we have responsibilities according to our previous activities. If we have children, we have to take care of children. If we have a family to maintain, we have to maintain the family. This is all because we chose to have these responsibilities. And therefore, we have to, in full Krishna consciousness, execute those responsibilities and not prematurely drop our responsibilities just to serve in the temple. That'll come, and we'll be more careful. If we find it difficult to have one child, then we won't have more children. You understand? If we find it difficult to have even maintain one wife, then we won't think of marrying a second time. So these things, it's the lessons that we learn, that don't do things to entangle you more. Now I see what a difficulty it is to maintain a family, to have a house, pay rent, pay electricity, pay my car insurance. Oh, you know, let me walk to the temple. You know, let me live in one room. You know, so this teaches us. It doesn't mean that you let your family starve. It means don't increase, reduce. Okay? And there is an end to it. There is. That's why there's vanapras and that's why there's sannyas. It's not that you go on for, you know, at age 50, we should be finished with our family life. And then gradually you can devote more and more time to services in the temple, but not artificially. That let the kids run and, you know, you don't know where they are, you don't care about their education because I'm doing service in the temple. No, that's not the way to do it. Okay? Thank you. All glories to Prabhupada.